Hello and welcome to the Warrior King podcast. My name is Michael Riggs. I'm a full-time author, artist, and entrepreneur here to assist you on your journey to unlocking masculinity, manliness, and the warrior spirit within and overall leveling up your life. So again, welcome to the channel, welcome to the podcast if it's your first time here, and welcome back all returning watchers and listeners. The topic of discussion today is the blended family dynamic. What that means is two people coming together and one or both of them have children from previous relationships. And we're going to talk about the challenges that come from that and how to overcome them. The challenges of being a step parent, the challenges of having two families come together in one home. Navigating life as a parent in general can be challenging, and navigating parenting in a blended family even more so. Now, the blended family dynamic can come in all forms. Maybe you have two sets of kids from two different households, or your partner has children from a previous marriage or relationship. In my case, I have two kids from a previous relationship, and I have three kids with my wife that I'm with now. And being a step parent or being married to a step parent can be challenging for both the kids and the adults. And I think that this is something that people don't often talk about, and that's why I'm taking the opportunity to talk to you about it today. So I'm going to give you some tips today to help you on your journey in parenting and your relationship when it comes to the complexity of the blended family dynamic. Now, consider this podcast episode as kind of a part one because there's so much that goes into the blended family dynamic that it would probably take writing a whole book to even scratch the surface. So definitely let me know if something wasn't answered in this episode and you have a question that you want answered, and let me know if you want more of this content when you get finished with this talk so that we can go further and I can help you answer some of those complicated questions when it comes to being a step parent, being married to a step parent, or the complexities of the blended family dynamic. Now, what gives me the credentials to talk about such a thing? Well, I have 5 kids. Like I said, I have 3 sons with my wife, and I have 2 daughters from a previous relationship. I also grew up around step parents when I was a kid, so I understand kind of both sides, the child's perspective and the adult's perspective when it comes to this. Now, how my dynamic goes is I live with my wife and my 3 sons, and every other weekend my daughters come over. Let's dive right into some of the challenges we face in these dynamics and how to approach them and handle them with wisdom. And the first thing that I want to get into here in this talk is the question, how do I parent my children that live in another household that I don't see all the time? This is one of the most difficult and challenging things that I've ever had to face in my life. Not only because it's very difficult to not see my own children all the time and to have them around all the time, but also because of all of the challenges that come with it. Now, what I have found is that I needed to accept that my children are being raised in another household most of the time, and that's just how it is. Accepting that brings peace of mind. The truth is, I can't control how their mother raises them, and I can't control what they do in their day-to-day lives when they're not here with me. And if I were to try to do so, like control everything about their day-to-day lives, question their mother about the way that they're being raised and all that sort of stuff, I would just be causing more negativity than good. You understand what I'm saying? That would just cause problems for no reason. The truth is, I can't control everything they do in their day-to-day lives. I can't dictate how their mother is raising them. I can't make the rules in their household. So what I do instead is when they are with me, when they come over every other weekend, I do everything that I can to guide them in wisdom. What I can control is when they are with me. Most importantly, I do my best to be the example of how I live my life, what my values and my beliefs are, how we live our life in our household. I do my best to be the best example of our side of it. And then I have faith and trust that as they grow up, as they grow into adults, that they'll have the wisdom to know the difference and be able to sort it out on their own. I believe that once they're grown up, once they're adults, they'll see what was good, what was bad, what worked, what didn't, and they'll have their own perspective on the entire thing. And if I'm the best example for them that I can be of my values and my beliefs and the way that I live, then when they are grown and they are assessing everything for themselves and sorting it out for themselves, they'll know from my example what I feel the best way to live is. So when your kids live mainly in another household, like I said, if you try to control everything, it will only drive everyone crazy. You, your ex, and those kids. It will just cause all kinds of problems that aren't even necessary. A good example is our household is a Christian household. We live in a Christian home, and my daughters are raised in a home that is not a Christian home most of the time. Now, when they came over every other weekend, if I tried to cram as much of the Bible into their brains as possible and harass their mom about not raising them as Christians and tried to control the situation, it would just cause all sorts of unnecessary negativity. It would cause more harm than good. So instead, when they are with me, I show them my life. I am the example of the way that I live. When they're with me, I live as a Christian. We pray at the dinner table. I am the example of that. And I have the wisdom and understanding that that is not the way that they live most of the time in their mom's house. And I have to come to terms with that and be okay with that. But like I said, be the example of what that means and what that life looks like. And when they're older, when they grow up, if they see that my life was super awesome, they'll be able to sort out the difference. You understand what I'm saying? And they do ask me questions about my life, my beliefs, my values, the way that I live, why I believe certain things, and I answer them. I answer them kindly. I answer them the best way that I know how in order to teach them and guide them and lead them in their lives. But at no point am I trying to control the situation or control their lives in any way, because the truth is they don't live in my household. And I could drive myself crazy all day long trying to make them live the way that I live. But the truth is, when it really comes down to it, I have no idea what they're doing when they're not with me. And I can't control what they're doing when they're not with me. Now, coming to terms with the fact that you can't control where your kids are, what they're doing, who they're with, they're your kids. It's very, very challenging. I'm not saying that it's easy to come to terms with these things, but if you do come to terms with it, it brings peace of mind and brings peace to your life. And it also brings peace to the children's lives, peace to their mother's life, and even peace in your own household, because it's just getting rid of so much negativity that's completely unnecessary and accepting things as they are in truth, and then living the best way that you can accordingly. And remember, it is a man's duty to lead his family and to lead his household. So lead with wisdom and lead with peace. And the next thing I want to talk about here on this episode is it normal to feel like my partner's children are invading my home or invading my space? And we'll get into that right after this quick ad break. Thank you guys. Stick around. Want to level up your life as a man and unlock your masculinity? My book, Warrior King, Unlocking Masculinity, Manliness, and the Warrior Spirit Within, is a 7-level course to embracing the primal wild self and awakening the Warrior King within, covering everything from what it means to be a man, embracing masculinity, love and relationships, being a protector and provider, pursuing your purpose and success, and a whole lot more. I spent a year living in a school bus conversion in the wilderness while I wrote this book, and I believe that it is a journey of self-discovery that will change your life forever. Everything that I learned on my own journey to unlocking what it means to be a man and leveling up my life is in there. The 7 levels are the primal, the listener, the wise man, the lover, the protector, the warrior, and the king. You can find a link for Warrior King, the book, in the description of this podcast episode or video. Grab a copy to take the first step on your transformational journey today. Again, that's Warrior King by Michael Riggs. All right, welcome back. I hope that's something that you're interested in. Definitely grab a copy if you want to level up every aspect of your life as a man. Hey guys, I just wanted to jump in here really quick to give a quick acknowledgement. This next part of the talk is specifically about the part-time step-parent role and the challenges that step-parents, especially new step-parents, face with having kids come over that aren't their own biological children. And I don't want some of the things that I say in the talk to be misconstrued in any way. I respect greatly and commend anyone who takes a child in as their own. I think that it's a wonderful, awesome, beautiful thing, but that is not the dynamic that I am talking about. That would be a totally different talk, a totally different podcast episode, and a totally different video. So this next part of the talk is in no way about taking a child in as your own who either doesn't have parents or lost their parents or doesn't have contact with their own parents in any way. I think that it's a beautiful, beautiful thing when people take children in as their own. But like I said, this next part of the talk is about the part-time step-parent dynamic and how that can be very challenging, especially at first. So with that being said, and with that acknowledgement, let's get right back into the talk. So is it normal to feel like my partner's children are invading my home? And of course you love them. I'm not talking about not liking your partner's kids. If that's the question that you want answered, I'm not equipped to answer it for you, because that's a whole nother problem in itself. You should definitely love your partner's kids. But what I mean is how it's challenging and difficult for step parents to come to terms with the fact that there are children from another household that are held to different standards. They have different rules in their homes. And when they come over, it shifts the whole dynamic. The whole dynamic changes, which can be very challenging and difficult. And I think that's something that people don't really talk about, is that it can be very challenging and difficult for step parents when the other kids come over. And it can kind of feel like on some level that your space is being invaded in some way, and you're having to alter your situation a little bit, which can be very difficult. Now, everyone's household dynamic and rules and standards are different. And when you have two households that come together every once in a while, it's an adjustment every time. And it takes a long time to get used to it and that sort of thing. And having the wisdom to know and accept this can give you all kinds of peace of mind and brings peace to your household. Now, like I said at the beginning of this talk, I've experienced this from the adult perspective, being married to a stepmom. And I also experienced this as the child living under the rule of a stepmom. stepmom. And I can tell you that it can be especially confusing for the kids. It's important that you don't have unrealistic expectations for either your partner or the children to act like there aren't challenges, or to act like, from lack of a better term, a normal family. And I think that one thing that nobody really talks about is the concept of I love them like they're my own. And while I think that that's ideal, when it really comes down to it, it's a process and it takes some time. And on some level, no matter how big or small, that is very challenging. And it can be especially challenging for new step parents who are doing this for the first time and trying to figure it out and navigate how to even approach parenting a child that's not your own. Ideally, you want to treat them as if they're your own and come to terms with and accept the fact that on some level they are not. And it's also important for the biological parent of those children in that dynamic to understand the challenges that the step parent is facing and to not try to force them to pretend like those challenges and those feelings don't exist, because they do exist. It is very challenging for step parents. And it's very easy to get offended when those kids come over and your partner starts acting different. And it's easy to have the false belief that they just don't like your kids. And this can cause conflicts and discussions and arguments. But in reality, that's not what it comes down to. What it comes down to is it is different. It is awkward. It does on some level feel like they're invading your space and that you have to alter your life for a couple of days. So it's very important for the biological parent of those children to come to terms with and accept that the step parent is gonna feel awkward. It's gonna be awkward for them. And they kind of feel like they're walking on eggshells, you know what I mean? Because it's not their kid when it really comes down to it. So there's all kinds of questions that come up. How do I discipline them if I need to discipline them? Is it okay that I tell them not to do a certain thing? Should I hold them to the same standards as I hold my own children in my own house? It can be very confusing. So understanding that it's difficult for that step parent and not pointing a finger at them or calling them out for acting different or anything like that, and approaching the situation with wisdom and understanding and love can be hugely beneficial and can bring peace to your home and dynamic, because you want to have one big happy family, right? You don't want it to be a negative thing every time that your kids come over. And you also don't want to be forcing the situation like everybody act like we're a family that's been together forever and nothing is challenging or difficult and you're not allowed to have any emotions or feelings about it, because that's crazy. And like I said, accepting things as they are in truth and coming to terms with it is the path to peace and peace of mind. It's like that old prayer, God give me the serenity and the wisdom to know the difference, or something like that. I don't know it. I mean, I know the concept, but I don't know it word for word. So let's recap some of the things that we've talked about a little bit. So how do you parent your children when they live in a different household? You lead as the example when they are with you and accept the fact that you can't control their main home life. It's just how it is. You could drive yourself crazy. You could drive your ex crazy. You could drive your current partner crazy, trying to control the situation and control how they are parented on their day-to-day life. But the truth of the matter is you can't control it. You just have to do your best when they're with you to be the example of a good way to live and hope for the best. As unfortunate as that sounds, when it really comes down to it, you just can't control it, bro. It's just how it is. Every family dynamic and standard and rules in their household are totally different. There's hardly ever one that's just like the other. And when two families come together as one family, every once in a while, or even for all the time, depending on what your dynamic is, it can be really confusing for everyone. And trying to force the situation and force everybody to act totally normal and like there aren't challenges that come with it, and like it isn't confusing for the kids, be like, definitely don't try to force everybody to act like it's a normal dynamic, because it's not. And coming to terms with that brings peace to everyone. And sometimes it's going to be awkward and it's going to be difficult and it is different, and all of these things are okay. Is it normal to feel like my partner's children are invading my home? On some level, yes, it is completely normal, because like I said, it's two households coming together and that can be very challenging and very confusing for everyone. So don't feel bad about that. Don't feel guilty for that. Being a step parent is very confusing and very difficult, and it's also confusing for the children having a step parent. Like, how do I act over here? How do I behave over here? My daughters all the time come over here and it's completely confusing for them. Like, they'll ask me things like, well, why can't I do this? Mommy lets me do this. And I'm like, well, do that at home. I don't know what to tell you, you know? But the point that I'm making here is that it's very confusing for the children as well when they're between two families and two households. And it's very confusing for anyone in any family where there's two households that come together as one, which is what they call the blended family dynamic. All right, so this was just a scratch at the surface of the complexities of the blended family dynamic. So if you want more on this, if you want me to go deeper with this, definitely let me know in the comments if you have any questions, if you want any questions answered about the blended family dynamic, how I handle it, anything like that. I would love to do another episode where I go further in this. So if that's something that you want to see, and if you have questions, let me know in the comments on YouTube, and I would love to answer those questions for you. If you got anything out of this video, if this episode inspired you in any way, definitely let me know in the comments, like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of my future content. Here on the Warrior King podcast, we talk about all sorts of topics relating to men and leveling up our lives as men. Lots of content on the way and lots of content that I've already put out, so definitely go back and browse those videos and see if any of them interest you. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks guys. Bye.